Hello, my name is Lucas. This is a bit of lit, and I can breathe just fine, thank you very much. This is the Wear a Mask tag, started by Brian at Bookish, and continued by Steve Donahue, and maybe some other people, I haven't seen them, in which you should talk about three different characters. One that wears a mask, one that hides something about themselves, and one that wears other protective coverings for their head. And the idea is to promote mask wearing because, of course, it is very easy to do, and it won't stop you from breathing, and anybody that tells you otherwise is seriously wearing their mask wrong or eats rocks, basically. Anyway, I thought I would start with The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. Very famous story, adapted by Andrew Lloyd Webber for a musical, and there is a major motion picture, probably many. Of course, Eric, young, well, not really young, but horribly disfigured Eric wears a mask to hide his face. He sort of haunts an opera house in Paris, which Gaston Leroux, when he started writing, he was a reporter for plays and these kind of things. And he would have known some of these rumors that he had, rumors about a haunting in an opera house in Paris. And a lot of the things that he'd heard, he contested were true to his dying day. And a lot of those things are in here. Some things have explanations where those ideas came from. Some, nobody knows. They could have just been a flight of fancy. But it's an interesting book. It's trashy in all the right ways. I would say it's good fun, worth reading if you want. It's not amazing by any means, but it is kind of fun until it gets absolutely insane at the end. Then it's just a wild ride, man. For my next two books, I don't have them with me. That was my prompt for the mask wearer. As far as the concealing something about themselves, I'm going to refer to the second book in the Binti series. I'm looking at my computer the monitor for my computer at Goodreads so I can remember the name, make sure I get it right. The Binti series, Home, I believe is what it says, by Nnedi Okorafor. I really hope I said that right. In which, in the first book, this young girl who is, I forget what tribe she's from in Africa, Himba? I talked about this in one of my classes recently, my Around the World classes. Himba people, right? She gets a scholarship. She lives on this horribly racist planet. Wonder where that idea came from. Led by, like, Saudi people, it feels like, from what I remember. To go to Umza University, which is the best university in the world. There is this sort of war going on between the ruling race, I guess, the dominant race of Earth, and these sort of octopus-type people. And she is the one who negotiates peace in the first one, at great cost to herself. In the second one, more of her identity, her identity as a human being gets kind of stripped away, it being sort of a post-colonial kind of piece of writing. And furthermore, because even her tribe of people, there are these people they are sort of prejudiced against. If I remember right, they're called desert people by Binti in the book. I could be wrong. I can't quite remember. And she comes to find out that her father actually comes from these people, and that is sort of devastating when she finds out for herself. This group of people that she's had this unintended sort of prejudice against is herself. Which you could say all kinds of things about that and what that means and what it's trying to say. You could have an interesting discussion, I'm sure. And I want to say these people were actually an advanced alien species that came from another planet. I can't quite remember. I feel like that's what happens. It's a little bit of a blur. It was my favorite one of the Binti series because the next one, more of her identity gets stripped away and she dies and she comes back to life, and it's like I could have lived without her dying and coming back to life kind of thing, and I would have been fine with this, and I think this would have been better personally. But Binti is alright. I would recommend it to kids, I suppose. Young adults, good fun. Not quite for me. There's actually a short story in the Binti Complete Trilogy Omnibus collection, which I can't remember what it is called at the moment, but it's about her time at UMSU University, which is what I wanted to read about in the second book, but that's not what happened. That's okay. Anyway, the third prompt, a character that wears protective covering on their head. I talked about this book recently. For me, that would be Stanley Yelnats in Holes, because he's digging holes in the hot Texas desert sun. And he needs to wear a hat to protect his head and neck, and at some point his hands, early on when he's just getting his muscles used to digging these holes for no reason. There's all kinds of interesting things you can say about this book. I've been talking about private prisons with my students in America. Oh, not in America. My Chinese students, about private prisons in America and how they are evil in a way. And their faces when I slowly start having them think about these things and pull the pieces together and form an idea, because I'm also trying to teach them how to do essay writing and try to show them how we can pull things from different parts of the text to come up with an idea of what this book is trying to say. And I've been having them pull these different pieces together, like who owns the shade? Well, it's the warden, and we find out later in the story that the warden's ancestor was the richest person in town, or one of the richest, and owned a lot of the land in the town that was near Green Lake, which is no longer Green Lake, and so this place has to be privately owned, but it seems very unlikely that it's privately funded. It's possible, I guess, but I feel like in a certain way that's just a waste of money to basically pay to feed all these people. There's better ways to profit, right, is what I'm trying to say, and how I'm trying to get these kids to think, and say, well, how else could she get the money? And they pretty quickly come up with the idea, oh, it's the country or the government or the state or whatever. Like, okay. Okay, so let's talk about Mr. Pendansky when he's talking to Magna and all the boys in the rec room, and he says you need to have goals, otherwise you're going to end up back in jail. And I start asking him, what is the purpose of prison? What is it meant to do? Of course, the kids say, it's meant to punish, but also, they don't know the word, but they say something along the lines of rehabilitation, make them better. Maybe to give them goals, to try to write their life and live legally and these kind of things are what my students are saying. And I'm saying, okay, now let's start putting these things together, right? We've got, maybe I'm just crazy and pulling things that don't need to be pulled, but we've got a warden who owns the shade, who's looking for something. What is she looking for? She's looking for treasure, right? The treasure that Kate Barlow left, that she stole from Stanley Yelnatz's family a long time ago, from his from his great-grandfather, Stanley Yelnatz. And asking him if she finds this, because if the kids find anything interesting, they are supposed to report to her, or to Mr. Sir, who will report to her, or Mr. Pendanski if he's around, whoever. Let someone with authority know, and they'll let the warden know, and then you can have the day off. And I ask them, okay, well, what if they find this thing that she's actually looking for? You think she's going to share it with everyone? No, of course not, because she's been sort of cursed in her own right. We've also been talking about the curses in the book, to find this, even at a very young age. I'm just kind of talking about holes even more because I really love this book, and I've also been talking about it a lot with my students, and trying to get them to understand how to formulate a thesis and an essay, 5-paragraph essay, this kind of thing. Okay, so she's not going to share it, she's just going to profit. Okay, we've got someone who owns the shade, getting money, probably, not confirmed, but probably from the government. This place is, one of the administrators is saying, well, you need to have goals so you don't end up back in jail. But this place does not teach anybody how to have goals or teach anybody anything meaningful except how to dig a hole. So it's basically just there to punish, not to rehabilitate. Which means what? Oh, they're going to keep going to prison, right? Yeah, and they're going to stay in prison, and they're going to keep working, doing all this stuff, and basically be slave labor for the profit of the people that own this juvenile detention center, prison type thing. And, I'm explaining it directly, but we're having more of a conversation. I'm pulling more from the students and trying to get them, and I'm just guiding them along to show them how we can pull these things to make an essay, make a thesis, and then we can pull supporting details, and then make our certain paragraphs about all these things that we're saying in our introduction paragraph and this kind of thing. And it's good fun. I've got some really good students. I also have one student who will never stop talking and is obstinate, and I can't stand him. But, that always happens, I suppose. And that's all I've got to say. Eric the Phantom for the mask wearer, and Binti, whose father was hiding the fact that he was one of these desert people, or whatever the term was. I really can't remember. I apologize if I get it wrong. And I think there was a special name for it, but I think it was interchangeable with desert people in the book. And then Stanley Yelnats, who wears a hat to protect himself from the hot desert sun in the state of Texas while he's digging holes. And then I just kind of rambled about the things I'm getting the kids to think about. Also, we talked about choice and whether we really have any, and how meaningful our choice is depending on how much power we have. Guiding them along, telling them about Elliot, discussing Elliot's story and how he wants to marry Mira, and Mira doesn't make a choice between Elia, who grows this pig to a really big fat size, versus this old man who wants to marry her, which is he also has a pig the same big fat size, and she doesn't choose. which is its own choice, but let's take a step further back. Who is making the choice for her to marry? Her father. Okay, so does she have a choice? No, not really. Does it matter what choice she makes? No. Okay, where else have we seen this, where someone with authority has made the choice for you? And it doesn't matter which one you choose. Oh, well, what about when Stanley is in the courtroom with the judge? I should not touch my mask so much, but I tried to just touch the corner. So sorry. That's embarrassing. Stanley's in the courtroom. The judge says, okay, you have very little time to decide between prison or Camp Green Lake. And Camp Green Lake sounds better, but it's not, as we discussed. As I discussed. You know, this is not how I teach. I obviously, but there's no one to talk back with. Anyway, just trying to show them that sometimes people with more power, more authority, they make the choices for us, okay? And it doesn't matter what choice we make. I'm not saying that's entirely true. I'm gonna poke holes in that next week and use the book for examples of how we can make our own choice, especially because we're going to read the part where Stanley chooses to go help Zero and save Zero, which is also part of his curse. So then I'm going to poke holes in the things that I'm saying, and they're going to be like, what do I need to think? I don't know. But they're starting to think for themselves more and more, and I'm liking it. Thank you, students. Anyway, that's that. Going on too long. This was basically a video about holes. Again, even though I made that like 2 weeks ago.